Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tackling something that is literally a matter of life and breath in occupational safety: respiratory protective equipment, or RP. Think of it kind of like a fragile shield. I mean, yes, it's absolutely essential in hazardous environments, but its effectiveness? Well, that relies entirely on a pretty complex chain of correct selection, rigorous testing, and honestly, flawless human behavior. So let's dive into how we can make this fragile shield truly bulletproof for your team. Here's a quick look at our roadmap for today. We'll cover the last line of defense, choosing the right respirator, the science of protection, the critical human fit, maintenance and heat stress, and finally, making RPE actually work. All right, let's jump right into part 1, the last line of defense. You know that feeling when you put on a piece of PPE and suddenly feel, well, protected from everything? We really need to debunk that dangerous misconception right out of the gate. Wearing PPE absolutely does not make the wearer invincible. Handing someone a mask doesn't just magically solve an airborne hazard problem. In fact, personal protective equipment sits at the very bottom of the hierarchy of controls. It should never, ever be your first choice. It's the backup plan. It's what we rely on when engineering controls or procedural changes just aren't enough to eliminate the hazard at the source. So you might be wondering, when is RPE actually the right call? Well, there are specific, pretty limited scenarios where strapping on a respirator is the best safety measure. We're talking about things like interim controls, protecting folks while a proper ventilation system is being built. It's also for emergency response work where things are totally unpredictable, or during maintenance when closed systems have to be cracked open. It's also perfect for short-duration, high-risk tasks, or basically to mop up any residual exposure left over after your engineering controls have done everything they possibly can. Bottom line, it is a lower-order control. Okay, moving on to part 2, choosing the right respirator. Once you've established that you definitely need RPE, you're looking at a massive spectrum of equipment, and your selection has to be incredibly precise. It's totally hazard-specific. On the far left of this spectrum, you've got basic filtering face pieces. These offer fairly minimal protection. But as you move over to the right, the complexity, the weight, and crucially, the protection level all jump up dramatically. You go through half masks, full face masks, powered air systems, all the way up to self-contained breathing apparatuses. Every step up this ladder fundamentally changes how air is filtered and delivered to the user. Let's look at the entry-level stuff. Air purifying respirators. On the left is your standard disposable filtering facepiece, and on the right, a reusable half mask where you attach different cartridges. Both of these are what we call negative pressure devices. What does that mean? It means they rely entirely on the wearer's own lungs to pull contaminated air through a filter. They're great for trapping mechanically generated dust or absorbing certain vapors, but here's the catch. They only work if the worker actually has the physical stamina to literally suck air through that resistance for their whole shift. It's exhausting work. Stepping further up, we hit the full face mask on the left. This is a game changer when whatever's in the air is also an eye hazard, like a really irritating chemical vapor. Then on the right, we see a huge leap in both protection and comfort: the powered air purifying respirator, or PAPR. See that battery-operated fan unit worn on the belt? It mechanically draws the air through the filters and actively pushes it up into the helmet. That completely removes the breathing resistance. It drastically reduces the physical strain, making it so much easier for a person to just do their job. And finally, the highest echelon of protection, supplied air systems. Now notice, these don't filter the room air at all. They totally replace it with an independent source of breathable air. On the left, an airline respirator feeds clean air through a high-pressure hose from a safe location. On the right is the SCBA, the self-contained breathing apparatus, which uses compressed air cylinders right on the user's back. These are strictly reserved for the absolute most dangerous, totally unknown environments, like when oxygen levels might drop too low or the atmosphere is immediately dangerous to life and health. Now, before we wrap up equipment, we really need to understand the basic mechanical difference between tight-fitting and loose-fitting masks. Tight-fitting respirators demand an absolutely flawless, unbroken seal directly against bare skin. They create a vacuum, and honestly, that vacuum is incredibly easy to break. Loose-fitting respirators are a whole different ballgame. They rely on a continuous, positive flow of air being pumped into a hood. Because that clean air is always pushing outward, it stops ambient junk from sneaking in. This is huge because it means these systems can actually accommodate workers who have facial hair or wear regular glasses. Let's move into part 3, the science of protection. Okay, let's talk a little bit of math, but we'll keep it straightforward. How do we actually measure the safety these devices provide? It all comes down to the protection factor. This is simply the ratio between the concentration of the bad stuff outside the mask and the hopefully much lower concentration of the stuff you actually inhale inside the mask. This is not just some marketing gimmick. It's the critical math you use to match a mask to a hazard. For example, if your testing shows the dust in the air is 10 times the safe limit, you absolutely must select a respirator with a protection factor of at least 10, just to break even. But here's the thing. That protection factor is totally meaningless if you've got the wrong filter. We have particulate filters, rated like P1, P2, P3, and these trap physical things, dust, fumes, mists. Then we have gas and vapor filters, which use stuff like activated charcoal to absorb specific chemicals. You have to remember this golden rule. A particulate filter will absolutely not stop a toxic gas, and a gas filter totally useless against a cloud of dust. It's like trying to catch a mosquito with a chain-link fence. If you get the filter wrong, your worker has zero protection.
All right, part 4, the critical human fit.
So all of this perfect science, the high-tech gear, the precise math, it all falls apart completely if we ignore the actual human wearing it. Think about it. What breaks a perfect mask? You can hand someone a brand new top-tier respirator with the exact right filters, but what real-world variables can instantly compromise it the second it goes on their face? Well, meet the seal breakers. For tight-fitting respirators, any of these will destroy your protection. Facial hair is public enemy number 1. Even a single day's stubble acts like a tiny forest, lifting that silicone edge up and creating microscopic highways for toxic air to bypass the filter. But it's not just beards. The arms of your safety glasses, deep facial scars, severe acne, or even losing or gaining a significant amount of weight. All of this alters your facial topography enough to ruin that critical, perfect seal against the skin. Because human faces are just so incredibly different, we can't just guess if a mask fits. We have to prove it through quantitative fit testing. It's this highly precise process where we literally punch a tiny probe into the mask while the worker wears it. That machine you see there is a particle counter. It measures the exact microscopic leakage happening inside the mask while the worker breathes, talks, and moves around. It proves with hard data whether that specific mask model actually seals on that specific face. No guesswork allowed. Now, that rigorous fit testing is usually an annual thing, but there is also a non-negotiable everyday requirement, the user seal check. Every single time, and I mean every time, a worker puts on a tight-fitting mask, they have to physically block the filters, inhale gently to create a vacuum, and make sure the mask collapses slightly without leaking. Then they block the exhalation valve and breathe out to check for outward leaks. This is how you guarantee the seal is mechanically intact right before stepping into the hazard zone. But listen, even a perfect, mathematically verified seal is completely useless if the mask isn't actually on your face. I really want to stress the gravity of wear time here. 100% is required. The math on this is actually terrifying. If you're in a contaminated zone for an 8-hour shift and you pull your mask down for just 5 minutes, maybe to talk to a buddy, scratch your nose, whatever, the overall protection level you get for that entire day plummets exponentially. A respirator only works when it is worn the entire time you're exposed. Period.
This brings us to part 5, maintenance and heat stress.
Let's ground all this technical talk in reality. For the folks actually wearing this gear all day, it is physically demanding. It increases breathing resistance, it traps body heat, and it causes real heat stress and discomfort. Because of all that sweat and daily grind, managing the life cycle of the mask is vital. You have to clean and disinfect it, you have to inspect those delicate little rubber valves and straps for micro tears, let it air dry completely, and crucially, store it away from the work area, like in a sealed container. If you leave your mask hanging on a dusty workbench overnight, guess what? The inside is coated with toxic dust by morning. Poor maintenance absolutely guarantees exposure. Finally, let's wrap this up with part 6, making RPE actually work. If you take absolutely nothing else away from this explainer today, please remember this. Respiratory protective equipment is not just a piece of plastic and rubber you hand out from a box. It is a continuous, rigorous, multi-step management system. RPE only works, literally only works, when it is correctly selected for the exact hazard, properly fitted to the individual's face, worn 100% of the time during exposure, meticulously maintained every single day, and strictly supervised. If even one of those 5 pillars falls, the entire fragile shield shatters and someone gets exposed. So I'll leave you with this question. Think about your own operations. If you audited your workplace RPE program right now, today, where is the weakest link in your chain of protection? Is it your filter selection, a lack of real fit testing, or are folks just pulling their masks down for 5 minutes because it's too hot? Find that weak link and fix it, because with invisible respiratory hazards, there is absolutely no margin for error. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Stay safe out there and keep learning.